All right, great. So today I would be talking about the following points. First, talking about how first of all, you have to write your story, right? You have to build your professional experience. You have the core skills that you need to prioritize in your professional journey, and also talk about how to tell that story that you've intentionally created. I'd also talk about my experience with networking strategies for growth and opportunities, how you can strategically place yourself, and the US education tools that you can use to do that. And also, I'll be talking about maximizing your personality for career success. One reason why I, put in this point is because, my personality, I think, is something that has really influenced my career. So I think it's important to like talk about that. I'd also talk about navigating uncertainty because it comes with the territory. Studying in the United States obviously exposes you to a lot of career choices that you've never heard of in your life. So you get to that point where you start, really having this uncertainty, doubting yourself, doubting whether, if the career path you've chosen is the right one for you. So I'll talk about that briefly. And finally, I'll talk about preparing for the real world. You've gotten all these experiences in the university and all of this. So how do you position yourself for the real world? All right. So you write your story by building practical experiences, right? But before I go into this point, can we have a little engagement? Can you, like, by show of hands, how many of you on the call already know, like, what career paths you want to go on? I don't know if okay, Chidima, I see your hand is up. All right, two people already know. All right. So in addition to great, that's nice. In addition to knowing, you know, the career path you want to follow, how many of you already have some practical experience that are relevant to this career path? Great. And nice. Perpetua, Chidima, great. And are there any of you who have like random experiences, but they are not necessarily tied to what you want to study? You're just, kind of doing everything and anything just to gain some skills. Awesome. Awesome. So these are all very good. These are all very good and proactive ways to position yourselves. So I think further down the presentation, we'll talk about how you can kind of marry all your skills together, and how there is no skill is a waste, no experience is a waste at all. At some point in your career, you're going to find something you did 10 years ago that is now helpful, and you be wondering, wow, it's great that I seized this opportunity this many years ago. So no experience is a waste, no skill is a waste at all. And again, if there's anyone on the call who doesn't have a clear career path yet, that is also okay. If you're on the call and you don't have any practical experience yet, that is also fine. This call, I hope, would also kind of help you to start thinking about, how to narrow your strategy to making a decision, and narrowing your search. Okay, so one thing I would like to highlight is that US education is not just about grades. The moment you get into the US system, you'd understand that, right from the first day of college or even prior to coming into college, students are already building a career portfolio. In the US system, the moment a kid or a student knows what they want to go for in life, they start planning around those things, carrying out activities that are like strategically, aligned to those things. And as a young coming from Nigeria and Nigeria education system, where like in secondary school you just do either sciences or arts or social sciences, and coming into this culture, you'd agree that it can be somewhat intimidating, to really get into this environment, and you see people who already know what they want to do in 20 years, and you're just like, I don't even know, what I want to do like in 5 years. So those are kind of some of the initial experience you'd have. But again, you would also soon learn that the environment is structured in such a way that it doesn't matter if you're coming in with zero idea. The alignment, the environment is structured in such a way that by the end of your 4 years, you already know exactly like the kind of things that you want to do. You already have an idea and you're already like working towards them. And again, some people can still work out, not specializing, right? However, they have a narrow sense of, a sense of purpose that is narrowed down to a specific theme. So in college, some of the ways that you can start kind of building your experience is by securing internships, usually from second year, sophomore year, or third year. You start applying for volunteering opportunities and jobs on campus. So personally, for me, I did all some kinds of like on-campus jobs that are not necessarily like academic, but they gave me those administrative skills, that I've never like had the opportunity to carry out in my life or like do if I was in Nigeria, right? So like I served as a front desk representative. I served as like an event planner for maybe college fair activities, or you serve as like a neighborhood or residence assistant. So those kind of opportunities are there for you to start building some core skills that I'll talk about shortly. So you also get an opportunity to participate in extracurricular activities that are aligned with your career interests. So this is if you already have an idea, right, of what you want to do. So you seek out extracurriculars that kind of where you gain those kind of skills. And talking about skills, in the US system, you'd find out that what you can do is more important than like your titles, right? You can be the lowest ranking personnel in an office, but your ability can like transcend across different kind of skills, different kind of competencies. So those are the kind of things that US education system builds. So it doesn't, the US system doesn't make you just specialized or like with limited skills. It kind of helps you to spread your tentacles and do a lot of things that at the end of the day you can tie together to like achieve more complex tasks, right? So it builds you up to be able to like carry out complex tasks. So as you navigate your career, some of the skills that you need to like really focus on developing are like communication skills. So you learn how to express your ideas clearly across different audiences and formats. So when you go through the academic system, some of your assignments, some of the essays you do is structured in such a way that you do research, you would also carry out presentation, and the prompts would be such a way that they tell you, okay, present this, do a research on this topic and present to a certain kind of audience, or present to a stakeholder, present to a policymaker. So it's already preparing you for the real life experience, right? Which is really at the end of the day when you graduate, these are practical things that you actually do. So it also sharpens your critical thinking, teaches you to analyze problems from multiple angles and develop solutions. So like if you are in the tech industry, for example, some of the things you have to start learning how to do is critically thinking about is the problem that I'm trying to solve, does it work in region A the same way it would work in region B, or will I need a different kind of setup for it to work in region A, because region A and region B have different political factors, have different economic climates, have different geographical climates, and all those kind of things. So it's building those kind of critical thinking skills allow you to really position yourself to succeed in your career. And then collaboration. Collaboration is one very important skills to develop, because you can never work in isolation. Even if you're running your own company, right? You would still need to work with your staff. You still need to work with, partner with different kinds of people. And these people are coming with different work ethics. They are coming with different work styles. So the ability to adjust and work with diverse teams, with diverse set of beliefs is, something that you really need to hone on. And it's something that the US system helps you to develop, because you'd get the opportunity to work in, to do career group assignments, and you most times be paired with people from different parts of the world, right? And that's one of the benefits of a US classroom. Then finally, adaptability. You have to be able to navigate change and how to learn new approaches quickly. And if things are changing, for instance, working here at the embassy, we have a lot of changes every time. We have new set of supervisors that we work with. They come with different kind of style. They come with different kind of leadership style. So you need to be able to adjust to be able to work effectively with different kind of a work structure. So US college professors don't just grade assignments, they would ask you to explain a concept to different kind of audiences. And then, so we've talked about, building your story. Building your story starts from, the kind of experience the kind of job opportunities or internships or volunteering activities you intentionally opt in for. So that's where you build, that's where you learn more about your self-awareness, that's where you build network, and these are all elements of what makes up your story, right? So after making up these stories, which comprise of your experience and your skills, so how do you tell them, right? How do you tell it to the public? How do you tell it to a potential employer? How do you tell it to a professor that you want to do a research collaboration with? So one, before I go in, so by show of hands, how many of you on the calls have a LinkedIn account? Divine, I see Divine, and one person, awesome. Okay, and then how many of you, Perpetua, how many of you have written an elevator pitch before, or have heard of elevator pitch? So yeah, we really have career ready students in the group, and that's lovely. So one of the ways you can tell your story is either through speaking about it or writing about it, right? Nobody will know your story just by looking at you, right? So some of the tools you can use to talk about your stories is a ready elevator pitch that you can talk to people about in 30 seconds, right, when you meet them, or the popular LinkedIn profile where you have, it's like Facebook for professionals, right? You can share your story, you can update your experiences, you can connect with people all over the world, and so on and so forth. And then you also have to be able to show how you connect your coursework to real world problems, and the measurable impacts that you achieve in the course of your work. So some of these things you can share on your LinkedIn profile as well. So one of the mistakes that I made while in college was, when you go to a social gathering or like a professional networking event, and someone wants to know more about you and wants to know about what you're studying, you start listening, you start listing out your degrees. Oh, I went to the secondary school, I studied this, I'm studying these courses in the university, I've worked here, I've worked in A, B, C, D. But what people really want to hear is, in those places that you worked, these courses that you've studied, what problems were you able to solve within that period of time? Let's say you were a resident assistant for 1 year or 2 semesters, and you're talking about it with a potential employer. You don't just say, oh, I was a resident assistant in so and so campus. You name, identify or highlight key examples, what happened during the course of your employment as a resident assistant. Were you able to solve a particular problem that the students were having on your floor? How were you able to mobilize the students in your building around, a particular objective, and what did you learn from those experiences? So it's like storytelling, right? Not just listen. Or maybe you took a course over the summer, and the course was so impactful that, in fact, at the end of the summer, you decided you were going to like go on this career path. So these are stories that you can actually bring, because one, it brings out the interesting side of you. Two, it kind of easily highlights, your core strengths, and it also shows that you're somebody who is self-aware, right? So that's one trick to telling your story when you're in a networking event. And so this is a sample elevator pitch. So like I said, it has to contain who you are, what you do, and most importantly, the relevance of what you do, right? It's not enough for you to mention that you're an exchange alumni coordinator. So you have to mention like maybe 3 key roles that your work entails as an alumni coordinator, and then who cares if you're an alumni coordinator? How does that really concern me? Like, how does you'd imagine the person who you're speaking to would be like, okay, you're an alumni coordinator, you connect past participants with funding, so and so what. So and the and so what is like where you bring the relevance now, right? Because the strengthening alumni voices and competencies as partners, they serve as partners in strengthening US-Nigeria relations. So just drawing that bigger context, the person you're speaking to is able to have like a direct, connection to the work that you're doing. So at the end of in your elevator pitch, always make sure to let the person understand why your experience is relevant to them. And that's why for elevator pitches, we are always trained to have a couple of, especially if you're a multi skilled person or multi-professional, right? If you wear many hats, you should have like 3 different elevator pitches, or the differences can be tailored to the different kind of audience that you meet. So you should have an elevator pitch for when you're engaging with a policymaker, have an elevator pitch for when you're engaging with, say, like an NGO, right? So different kind of people that you'd work with. Have an elevator pitch for when you're conversing with, like networking with the tech audience, right? So the purpose is that the relevance part of your elevator pitch should now, speak to your audience, speak to the person you're conversing with, to understand how this experience is relevant to my work, right? So if I was speaking with, say, like a tech community, for instance, I'm not going to mention civic engagement or entrepreneurship. I'll just make sure to highlight the alumni that are working in the tech sector and how it is relevant to that tech organization. So I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. If I'm talking to a policymaker, for example, I'd only highlight, the work of alumni that are in like policy advocacy or policy analysts and all of this, and highlight how it is relevant to, developing policies or strengthening policies that strengthen US-Nigeria relations. And so on and so forth. So always have tailor your elevator pitch to the audience that you have. It doesn't mean that you're two-faced. It doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing or you're not here, not there. You're just being strategic in your engagement. And then, yes, so networking is a career strategy, not luck. We've talked about the various ways to build your experience. So how do you meet? What are some ways that you can meet potential employers or potential collaborators or potential partners? It's through networking. And this is something that the American education system really emphasizes. It emphasizes building relationship. It's emphasizing, connecting with people, because honestly, opportunities come through people and not just applications. So there are times that, you cannot be aware of all the applications that are currently opened in the world, right? Especially even the ones that are like tightly aligned to what you're looking for. For instance, this position, I wasn't aware of it when it was open, but because my supervisor on the call, Madam Shade Adebayo, she saw the position and she was like, I think this would fit her skills, and she notified me and I applied for it. So, but imagine if I had not built that relationship with her, I don't think she would remember me, right? Or she wouldn't necessarily know. She might remember me, but she wouldn't necessarily know what's my area of interest in, what my focus is on. So that's why it's important to build relationships, to strengthen your connection with people, update your LinkedIn profile, let people know and understand what you do, let people know and understand your core competencies through your storytelling and branding. Yes. So examples of in college, some of the career development tools you can use, you can access is office hours with your professors. If you have any professor that you really, you read their profile and you're really interested in getting to learn more about what they do and seeking their guidance, you can meet with, schedule a one-on-one meeting with them and discuss some of your ideas with them. And the US system is so great that I think for the longest time when I was in college, I just couldn't imagine how I would walk into a professor's office and just start talking. You know how this culture of I've not had any experience in Nigeria universities, but the little one I had in secondary school was just really, and the stories that I hear, right? Professors are usually like very strict, and you have to like that respect for elders. You cannot just go and meet a professor and start chatting like your mates, right? So this was really hard at first, but the good thing about US system is that it's completely the opposite. In fact, professors would be really worried if no students are coming to them to like discuss and like have office hours. And then another tool for your networking is the alumni network. So identify the alumni network in your college or any professional group that you've participated in before, and discuss what they are currently doing post college, what opportunity is out there, especially if there are people who have studied the same course that you did. Just have a chat with them. And then there's also the option of informational interviews, right? So identify people in your field that are doing something that you might want to do in the future, and prepare a couple of questions that you would ask them. So other tools that you can access in college is, CV reviews, mock interviews, and career fairs. They usually have some of this on campuses to really leverage on and build yourself or prepare yourself for opportunities. So you really never know how you can get an opportunity. So a conversation after class with a professor or like another student can lead to maybe the student recommending you to go see a professor he knows, or it could be the professor himself saying, oh, let's chat about this during office hours. And then you do that and it leads to like a research, opportunity. And you can further gain some experiences from this opportunity that would now help, that can now become like a talking point in future job interviews. So that's really how you kind of pick, pick these gems here and there that would become like precious stones in the future. So next, yes, navigating uncertainty. Earlier, I talked about how it's okay if you're not, really confident about your career path at the moment, and if you feel like, you're finding it difficult to understand, what you really like or what you should really go for. So career paths are not linear. I'm sure some of you know this by now. It's okay to have doubts every once in a while. I think at this point, let me just pause to also see by show of hands, how many of you have ever had like doubts about or are currently doubting, your career path. Divine, okay. Wait, Arinola, yes. This is normal. It is completely okay. And honestly, it's for you to have doubts shows that you have a certain level of, self-awareness, right? It means you're thinking critically. It means you're questioning, right? Because if you're not having any doubt, it means maybe you're just going with the flow. You're not really like reflective. So it's having doubt is it's in a way like a good, a positive thing, because it allows you to pause and reflect and refine and re-strategize, right? So yeah. So changing majors or changing your career interest is really normal. So for me, I applied to study chemical engineering, right? When I got into college, but along the way, during my sophomore year, from participating in extracurricular activities, volunteering at community centers and community organizations, I just really felt like I felt more connected with anything that has to do with public engagement, anything that has to do with people to people, exchange. I just really loved listening to people's stories and, coming up with, brainstorming ideas and solutions for people's problem and just supporting people. So I changed my major to human development and family studies. And I also just really got that curiosity to be really self-aware about myself, about the community, about the family units, and that transition from engineering to social sciences really actually like uh, shaped me like in a very deep sense. I can't begin to go into details of how like that transition has helped me. So it's really okay to change your mind, to change your career. About just make sure that as you're changing it, make sure that it's an informed change, right? So like you're not it's do your research around what you want to change into before you transition. Do your research around what are the challenges, what are the requirements, what are the demands at the time, emotional or physical demands of this new um, uh, 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 course or career path that I want to transition into, so that you don't just humanitarian work sounds lovely. I'll be traveling around. I'll be helping people, but ask the professionals in the humanitarian field, right? Have some, find people to interview so that you know the should I say ugly parts for lack of a better word. You know the downsides of that profession, so that as you're going into it fully aware of the pros and cons, so that you don't just fall into it surprised and you start regretting why you change. So change is fine, but just make sure that it's an informed change. So exploring multiple paths to discover where your strengths intersect with your interests. Use internship as experimentations, and use don't always wait until you find paid internships. Unpaid internship is the best one to use as experimentation. I don't think anybody will pay you to come and experiment with them. So take initiatives on campus, right? Another way to also like really know, am I a 9 to 5 person or am I a CEO person, So start problem solving projects on campus, right? Programs that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So like if it's a 3 month program, if it's a 2 month program, let it be time bound, let it be addressing a specific issue, be able to measure it at the end of 3 months to say this is, these are the outcomes and, you know, impact. And then make sure that it's something that is achievable. Do you have all the resources to do that? So kind of do this analysis before you start some of this project. And the advantage of starting your own initiative is that it now helps you to like understand throughout in the process of implementing that, you understand if I am an initiator, or if at the end of the day you can decide, starting something on my own is not for me. I need to find a company and an organization that aligns with my values and do my 9 to 5. So these are the advantages. Again, lastly, seek feedback, right? If you are in doubt about anything, speak with an employer at an internship or at a campus job. Ask them how you're doing, how you're performing, what you can do better. You'll be surprised what people will tell you about your performance. It will be possible that things that you're insecure about, people are actually seeing it as a strength, right? Or it would be possible that something you think you're doing very well is actually something that is not culturally right. So seeking feedback allows you to reevaluate your actions and take corrections. So yes, the US education system encourages exploration, not perfection. Nobody expects you to know it all. Nobody expects you to be perfect, but people actually applaud you for high sense of self-awareness, for exploration, and corrective actions. Yes, and this is, a part that is really close to my heart, maximizing your personality for career success. Like I said before, Madame Shade would tell you because she knew me very well when I was 13 years ago, exactly 13 years ago, when I was an opportunity fund student. I was very shy, like extremely shy. I think, if there is like a spectrum of introverts and extroverts, I'm like the extreme end of introverts. So that's why, and I know that many people are like that. Like the core of your personality is just that solitude and keeping to yourself. And for me, what I wish I would have known earlier before going into college is that I can still thrive with that personality, right? I just have to like know when to come out of my shell and know when to withdraw, and when I'm in that withdrawal state, what I should be doing constructively to build myself. And so for another engaging activity, can, like, by a show of hands, how many of you identify as introverts? How many of you identify as, let's do the introvert first. Let's see the introvert in the house first. By show of hands. If there's nobody, I'll just skip this session and we'll not go home. Sophie, okay. All right. I'm seeing two people. Chidera, great. Okay, I have fellow Sophie. I have fellow introverts in the house. So how many of you are extroverts? How many of you identify as Martins? Okay. Arinola, nice. Nice, nice, nice. Yes. So intro, and how many of you fall in between? Because we have ambiverts. Sometimes you're introvert, sometimes you're extrovert. You're not really like one or two. Ambiverts, Faith Adedayo. All right. Okay, so basically introverts, generally think a lot before speaking. For like me, before I say, I'm quiet, and most of the time I'm very quiet. And the reason why I'm quiet is because I'm analyzing how this will sound. I'm analyzing what I would say. Well, I'm analyzing everybody's faces in the room, how they'll react to what I'm saying. And before you know it, today, nobody has time for all those analyses. You're either speaking or you're not. And you can easily, that's how your voice becomes, drowned in the space. And, introverts are energized by their solitude. They like keeping to themselves and all of those things. And, the opposite is the case for extroverts. So introverts tend to prioritize depth over breadth. They would rather quality, should I say, quality rather than quantity. They rather connect with just one person and make it a long lasting connection than connect with like multiple people and just move on to other groups of people. But so what you have to know is that when it comes to navigating career paths, you can't say introvert is better than extrovert. Neither of them is better than the other. But it's just that you need different strategies to be able to excel. The strategies that extroverts would use to excel will not necessarily work for introverts, right? So you have to understand your natural tendencies and like build the right approach. So in terms of building career experiences, building your career, seeking out experiences, if you're an introvert, it will be helpful to, do more research work, work that kind of work you can do in solitude, right? Develop strong portfolios, focus on deep expertise in your field. So for an introvert, depth is your strategy, is your strategic advantage. Having like being a thought leader, so to speak, is your strategic advantage. And for an extrovert, okay, I'm sorry, I think I made a edit mistake here. For an extrovert, oh, sorry, all right, for an extrovert, it would be helpful for you to join multiple clubs and organizations because connecting with people comes naturally to you, right? It's like you're a people person, so you really have to leverage on that advantage that you have, and seek leadership positions and gain leadership experiences and mobilize people for a cause, for an action, volunteer in diverse settings, and build a broad network. So visibility is your strategic advantage as an extrovert. So while in college, you really need to like focus on these strategies. And for an introvert, focus on, you know, doing research, independent research. Maybe have like a Medium account where you can, publish your self-reflections and all of those things, and find one or two people who share similar values and work with them. And then still on in terms of personal branding, right? So like I was saying, really hone on your writing skills as an introvert, because you're always thinking. One thing about introverts and people in between, you're always thinking. I'm like, sometimes I tell myself I think too much to not be writing because how else would people like really understand what you're thinking about if you're not sharing it with people? And you can do that through writing, through updating your LinkedIn profile, writing compelling essays, giving yourself prompts and writing them, just building your writing portfolio. And as an extrovert, elevator pitch, meet with people often and talk about what you do, go in networking conversations, seek public speaking opportunities and other impromptu presentations, like joining Toastmasters club. I think all US universities have like a Toastmasters club. So joining those kind of clubs and really honing on your public speaking skills is very important. So one thing I have to mention at this point is that I'm not saying as an introvert you shouldn't pursue some of these opportunities. I'm just saying you have to like find a balance, right? In between the two. An extrovert should also like sit back and reflect sometimes and develop listening skills for when other people are talking, and not try to like overshadow the whole room. The same way an introvert should step out of their shells sometimes and pursue public speaking opportunities so that they can exercise like airing out their views and opinions so that your voice will not be drowned. Yes, networking part that works for introverts, focus on building deeper relationship, seek out one-on-one connection if that's what works for you. Find always be authentic in your connection. Authentic connection matters more than quantity, right? So choose the approach that feels genuine to you. Yes. So at the end of the day, you have to also think about how sorry, Ogenefega, I see that your hand is up. Is that a legacy hand or do you have a question? If you have a question, okay, it's a legacy hand. Okay, there will be time at the end of the session for question, and I'm always rounding up, almost rounding up. Okay, so while in college, you need to start thinking about how you can turn your education to real world impact, right? So one thing you'd really get from a US education is that in the classroom, like with every assignment that you have, with every project you have, they're helping you tie, the content to real world issues, right? They are citing real world examples. They are citing real world, problems and telling you to come up with solutions, design projects, design initiatives that address real world problems. So also from the volunteering opportunities and community engagement opportunities. You're engaging with people with real problems. You're working in organizations, solving real issues. And you're also learning to, as you just make sure that as you do all of these things, learn how to measure the difference you're making, right? If at the end of like an internship period, you were able to like address, you were able to engage with 100 audiences. So learn to measure those impacts in like a statistical format, right? So that it would inform, how you present those impacts to like a potential employer. And so second to the last point, yes, the last point actually is this. Okay, so the last point about the competitive edge that a US college education gives you is that you end up building a global mindset, right? Because you're engaging with people from students from all over the world. You have that real world experience of, being able to adapt to any regional problem, or having that regional perspective in everything that you do, and you're able to apply for opportunities that are not just limited to your country or limited to a particular place, so you can literally adapt in any part of the world because of your experience with international peers and all of that, and also because of your cultural understanding, right? You're able to network with students from different continents in the world. And so one thing you should really keep in mind is that go into conversations or go into group projects, go into activities with this focus in mind. If you're asked to carry out a community service, use that opportunity to engage this international student. Ask them about some laws in their country, especially tied to if for instance, you want to be a human rights lawyer, right? And you get to be in the same group as people from other parts of the country. Use the opportunity to get all their perspective on how human rights is addressed in their country. What are the human rights issues in your country? And same thing for tech as well. What are the tech innovations in your country? What are the cultural perception about tech in your country, and all of those things. So that's how you gain cultural understanding of different kinds of people. That's how it's not just enough that I have a Chinese roommate, I have, a Brazilian, so and so, but just try to have deep conversations and get to understand them culturally. And yes, share diverse perspective and share yours with them as well. Group projects allows you to work with students from multiple countries, learn how to approach problems differently, and it broadens your thinking. And that's the US education in a nutshell. It's very robust. It's something that I feel like everybody in the world should have an experience of at least once in their lifetime. And so in closing, I just want to like reiterate some of the points that I've mentioned earlier. Is that in your career journey, you have to start thinking early, start building early, start strategizing early, start reflecting early, start personal branding early, build your skills, not just grades. I think for a long time in college, I was really fixated on grades. I wish I hadn't. I wish I hadn't fixated on grades so much, because I was already used. I was coming from a system where you've been taking first position. You're the head girl. You're the library prefect, and all of those things, and you're always at the top. But the US college is not a ground. It's not a place to start. Hold on to those things. So as soon as you can, yes, those opportunities, that position have given you the opportunity to like get scholarship and like travel out. But don't don't hang on to those glory days too long. Just focus on now building yourself for like the real world, the real life. So it's something that I didn't learn on time, so I'm sharing with you. So tell your story with confidence. Make sure you highlight the impact of your story. Make sure you highlight the relevance of your story to who you're talking to, right? Be able to craft your story based on who is listening to it. So like, why should the person be listening to you? What should the person walk away with? Embrace uncertainty. Like I mentioned before, it's part of life. It shows that you're human, you're thinking, you're reflective. So embrace it and find ways to adapt and make informed choices when you're transitioning. Leverage on your core personality while being adaptable. Try to see what are the core, how your personality can help you, build on certain areas, and be adaptable. And don't say because you're an introvert, you won't pursue opportunities that would put you out to like talk about yourself, right? That's not what it is. Take initiatives. Initiatives allows you to understand yourself, allows you to understand your strengths and know whether you are a 9 to 5 person or a CEO person or a founder. So again, you can always combine the two, but at the end of the outcome is not that from taking initiative, you either decide that 9 to 5 is not for you, or being a founder is not for you. Sometimes you can realize that you can actually do both, right? So that may be what you get out of taking initiative sometimes. And so in a nutshell, my journey as an opportunity fund scholar taught me that career readiness is not a single moment. It's not something that, you just wake up and because you graduated from a US college, there's a job waiting for you, or there's a particular path you need to take. No, it's something that you build every single moment intentionally, in the people you talk to, intentionally in the activities that you seek to engage in the mentors you choose, and so on and so forth. So it's a series of steps that kind of build your career. And always know that you're never alone. Always find mentors and people to share your thoughts and intentions with. So to wrap this up, I've highlighted like some key things that you can try your hands on at the end of this session. So commit to doing one of these things. If your CV is not updated, because some of you mentioned your hands that raised your hands that you already have experiences, but this experience is clearly communicated in a written format. So if that's not the case, go back and commit to doing that today. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, commit to creating one today where you can share your story and brand yourself more. If you don't have an elevator pitch you've never drafted before, go online and see, series of samples online that you can use to craft your own, and just, even do 3 or 4 different variations. If I'm speaking to this audience or this company, how will my elevator pitch sound like? If I'm pitching to this organization, how will it sound like? If I'm pitching to Dangote, will it be the same thing as if you're pitching to Elon Musk? Something to think about. Then finally, take a bold move, reach out to someone in your career that you admire, especially now that people can just randomly, reach out to should I say influential people or popular people on social media like Twitter and Instagram, for example. Just reach out to them. It's so a couple of days ago, I saw somebody on Twitter talking about how every day, like at the end of the day, they literally send messages to famous people in the world. They don't care whether they would reply or not, but they are somebody that they admire and they would really love to connect with. So they just put it out there in the universe with the hope that, and you never know, somebody might respond or not, but you don't have anything to lose. So that's all. I hope this, I've not I've not been rambling too much, and this session is helpful to really think about your career goals, and also really think about influence you to see how you can leverage on US education system to develop your career and be a global citizen with high impact. But thank you very much for listening, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. That was actually really, really in depth, and Definitely everybody took something home today. If you have any question, please could you put them in the chat box? I'm going to stop recording for now before we take the questions.